Sales of the royal book Endgame have been stopped in Holland after a Dutch version appears to identify a family member accused of racism. We'll let you know what that's all about.
And banking on privacy, the government has added a clause in a late amendment to the Data Protection Bill today. What could it mean for you and your privacy?
And did you watch I'm a Celebrity last night?
Saw a bit of it.
I'm getting to bed too late at the moment because I'm watching it right until the end.
Oh, I don't do that.
But
did you see much of Nigel?
I did. Not as much of Nigel as I would have liked, and I don't mean his shower scenes. I just mean they seem to be editing him out quite a lot from the content.
And there is talk of skullduggery by ITV to get him out completely. And fortunately, we've got in the studio with us Richard Tice, who was one of his best mates, who knows all about it.
Yeah, there was a little encounter with him and Nella Rose, if you remember, she's the YouTuber, about whether you can reappropriate any sort of cultural dress. And then, of course, you saw Nigel being discussed when he wasn't in shot. So, you know, it's not looking great at the moment, but we want to know what this might mean for Nigel. Richard Tice is here, as Andrew says. Let us know your thoughts this morning, gbviews@gbnews.com. First, though, your very latest news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Bev, thank you and good morning. This is the latest from the GB Newsroom. Israel has received a further list of people to be released from Hamas captivity later today. The exchange of hostages for Palestinian prisoners will be the sixth in the extended ceasefire truce between Israel and Hamas, which is set to expire tomorrow morning. Israel has said the truce could be prolonged further, provided Hamas continues to free at least 10 Israeli hostages per day. The Israeli Defense Forces say the 12 hostages released last night include 10 Israelis and 2 Thai nationals in exchange for 30 Palestinian prisoners. A controversial new book about the royal family has been pulled from bookshelves in the Netherlands. Endgame has been taken off Dutch shelves amid reports the book names a member of the monarchy who allegedly asked about the skin colour of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex's son Archie before he was born. The Dutch publisher says an error occurred in the translation and is currently being rectified. Labour will set out measures today aimed at protecting small businesses from antisocial behaviour on the high street. Shadow Business and Trade Secretary Jonathan Reynolds will address small business owners and members of the Essex Chamber of Commerce. Reynolds says legislation aiming to ensure invoices are paid on time will also be introduced if the party wins the next general election. He'll also renew a pledge to roll out the new town centre police patrols to revitalise Britain's high streets. And millions of pounds will be invested into additional national parks and community spaces in a new environmental package. Environment Secretary Steve Barclay says the plans are designed to boost Britain's access to nature ahead of the upcoming COP28 summit in Dubai. The government promises further funding for existing protected landscapes and new projects covering over 200,000 hectares of land, including woodlands, rainforests and sustainable food production. For more on all of those stories, you can visit our website, gbnews.com. Now back to Andrew and Bev.
Very good morning. It's 9:34.
Yeah, well, we haven't seen much of our mate Nigel Farage in the jungle in I'm a Celebrity Getting Out of Here. There's talk of censorship.
Maybe. He was always going to be at the mercy of the editors, wasn't he? The Express newspaper is now claiming that Nigel made a racist comment in a privately recorded video message.
Yeah, our reporter on the Gold Coast, Ben Leo, joins us now. So, Ben, what is all this about? It sounds like skullduggery to me.
Morning, guys. Look, I'm just going to present you the facts as they are. I'm not going to give any opinion or theories. So a couple of nights back on Patrick's show, I exclusively revealed that ITV had refused to play quite an interesting conversation between Nigel and the campmates about his friend Donald Trump. Nigel was talking about what a good guy he was, how he'd helped him out on the campaign trail, and how they were friends. ITV didn't play that interaction. I don't know why. They've not explained why. However, it did fuel these growing theories and concerns that they were deliberately starving him of airtime, reportedly because the show's full of lefty producers and they don't agree with his politics. So that was that. That was the big story that was confirmed earlier today. My sources inside the camp were speaking the truth. Hours after that, overnight, last night, the Express ran this story claiming that ITV News, a separate entity to I'm a Celebrity, but still under the ITV network, of course, that ITV News this weekend was planning to release a story claiming Nigel Farage recorded a cameo video 2 years ago, which included a term that they deemed to be racist. I'm not going to repeat the term, but it's quite obscure and it's up for debate. But let me just read you the statement from Nigel's team, and also, just by the way, if anyone's not sure what Cameo is, it's a video service where normal members of the public can ask celebrities or high-profile people to record a video message for friends, for someone's birthday or special occasion, and they will do it in exchange for typically about £70 or £75. So this is the statement verbatim from Nigel's team in relation to this story on the Express, that ITV was about to drop this story calling Nigel racist this weekend, which was going to coincide with the first I'm a Celebrity vote, the eviction vote. So the statement reads, over the last few years, Nigel has filmed over 4,000 cameo messages for fans and supporters. This includes videos for people's weddings, birthdays, stag do's, in-jokes between friends, and even people who are ill in hospital. When Nigel first joined Cameo, there was a concerted effort by Remain supporters to hijack the platform to embarrass Nigel by getting him to read out obscure, rude words and in-jokes between friends. It's widely reported that some of these slipped through the net, as Nigel is a classic boomer dad. In the video, Nigel was asked by a customer on Cameo to read a message they had written for a friend. Had Nigel known that the message he was asked to read contained an obscure, offensive word, he would not have made the video. That's the statement in full. The key problem here for Nigel and his team is that ITV News came to GBNews and to Nigel with this story overnight, asking for comment from Nigel, knowing full well that he's locked in the jungle without comms, without a mobile phone, without contact with his lawyers, us or his team on the outside. So the question is, how on earth did they think he was going to reply to it? Second of all, they were dropping it to coincide with the first eviction vote in the jungle this weekend. I make no comment on that, but I just present you the facts. And thirdly, it came after GB News' revelation that ITV had indeed omitted interesting conversations that Nigel had with campmates, particularly about Donald Trump, which was fueling online concerns that he was deliberately being stripped of airtime. So that's that. In terms of the show last night, it was curiously extended for 15 minutes at the very last minute to include what we understand was this clip of Nigel having yet another row with Gen Z influencer Nella Rose. This is the moment.
Why do they say water like that? Is it like a joke or something? We say it. We go put it in the water. It's patois. It's the Jamaican version of saying water. They say water.
You got to boil your water, and I said your water.
In fact, if you sang that, they'd call it cultural appropriation, Fred. They would. No, they would.
I know, but everybody's doing my accent.
I know.
Is it cultural appropriation?
I know. It's when suits. They criticise when suits.
What do you mean, Nigel?
If a white person has a black accent, that's considered to be a crime. You know, they should be cancelled.
It depends in what context. If you're taking a then you're taking a but if you're not, then you're not.
So you can't, sort of can't win territory.
Nah, it just depends on the context.
When we were talking about it, he was saying, like, it's just about the population, but the way that he's, like, promoted that in his work has just been a bit inhumane almost, you know what I mean? And it's like, hang on.
So there we go, Nella Rose, who's quickly earning herself a reputation as the personification of Gen Z victimhood. She's always finding something to be offended about. Elsewhere tonight, Nigel has been chosen for the Bush Tucker trial, so he will be involved tonight, so all eyes on that. But that's the timeline of events. Make of that what you will, make your own assumptions.
OK, Ben Leo there in Australia. Thank you, Ben.
And by happy coincidence, couldn't be better.
Good morning to both of you.
Yes,
morning.
Richard
What a
Tice.
story. This is extraordinary. Look, the reality is that ITV wokerati, the staff,
right up to the very boss, Kevin Ligo, who has been caught at an event making a rude gesture to Nigel and says, don't worry, he knows how to come home from Australia in a dinghy.
Actually, I thought the part of that speech that was even more shocking about Kevin Ligo, this was at an industry media event where he stood on the stage and he had a sign language interpreter with him, and he said, well, we all know the hand sign for Nigel Farage, don't we? And then did a hand sign. Nobody else would attract that sort of public criticism.
So this is a deliberate attempt by the bosses at ITV, who basically, look, they've banked a lot of the advertising revenues in the first few episodes. Right? The truth is, the programme's actually now become rather dull and rather boring. But the last thing they want is for Nigel to win it. Of course. And so the production staff, they're cutting him out. Ben's just talked about some of the interesting discussions that have gone on that they're deliberately not using. So the reality is everyone's saying, people are now writing articles, why is it so boring this year? Well, I've got good news. There's a way, folks, where you can watch only the good bits which are interesting with Nigel. What you do is don't watch the live bit with all the boring adverts. So download it on ITVX on your iPad or whatever, and then you can fast forward it to the good bits using the 10-second button, so you miss all the adverts, you miss all the dull stuff, and you just watch the interesting stuff. Basically, the last 2 nights has meant I've only watched about 10 to 15 minutes.
Because he's not on it much.
Because he's not on it.
Well, this is the thing. So I think Ben just said then that they've asked Nigel to make some sort of statement about this, even though he's in the jungle.
How can he do that when he's in the jungle and he's got no communication? Yeah. He doesn't even know about what's gone on in politics in the last 2 weeks.
That's awful.
David Cameron's if he knew that David Cameron's foreign secretary, he'd be bellyaching.
So this is a deliberate attempt in order to try and make Nigel look bad. This cameo stuff from a couple of years ago, I mean, the whole thing's a complete nonsense. It's about a word that's got multiple meanings.
That's the point.
Right? This is the point, and it's a really important point. People understand that. And I tell you what, if ITN News run this, then I think they will have an absolute pile-on. I think it will be just extraordinary.
And it will just galvanise people to vote to keep him in.
So actually, more and more people should say, we're not going to have that. Vote Nigel and make him a winner. He's a winner anyway.
Do you vote to keep them in or do you vote to get someone out?
You vote to keep them in. So you can go onto the I'm a Celebrity app and you can get 5 free votes to keep Nigel in the jungle if that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
I hate to say I told you so. Actually, I love it. It's my favourite thing in the world, as Andrew Pearce will tell you.
Nothing more annoying.
She does say it a lot.
But I said when Nigel went in, the channel are not going to want to present him in a positive light.
Even though they paid him a lot of money.
Win. So I hate to see this spiralling out of control, but you know him so well, Nigel. We know how the public respond to him. How can this ever turn around now for Nigel in the jungle?
Oh, look, I think the reality is that everybody's been talking about it. It's the only reason people are watching this series.
Yeah.
And so they've completely shot themselves in the foot, frankly, ITV, by making it so boring that the viewing numbers are plummeting.
And and they've also got that intensely irritating, what is she? An influencer.
Nella Rose.
So look, I mean, this is all to play for, but I actually think it'll all work out in Nigel.
Where I think ITV went wrong, actually, is not putting anyone intelligent in there to have the race debates, because Nella Rose doesn't have anything.
No.
Nigel can have that debate on a slightly more intellectual level. He's got no one to spar with.
He's had some good discussions with
that guy from the restaurant, Fred.
He's all right. Had some good discussions, and that's what Nigel wants, a sensible, rational... And it's not as though they haven't got lots of time to talk about this stuff.
Quite.
I mean, frankly, most of the time you're bored out of your brains there. But anyway.
Let's talk to you about the big political story, Richard. Immigration, it's on a lot of the front pages again today. My God, those figures last week were shocking. 745,000 legally when David Cameron was Prime Minister.
Remember, that's the net number.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? The gross number is 1.25 million. That's a city the size of Birmingham. Last year, it'll be the same this year, and I think it'll be exactly the same next year. Here's what's going on. You've got the government banging on that the numbers have got to come down. Who created the rules, post-leaving the European Union, that enabled these numbers to go to the levels that they are? This lot of cabinet ministers, and indeed the Prime Minister. So to hear these people come on and say they've got to come down, they created the rules. Just look at the student rules, this graduate worker visa scheme. They introduced that in July 21. 2 years ago. So it's no surprise.
And tell us what that means.
So what that means is, if you've done a degree in the UK as an international student, then you can stay here for 2 years. And they created the rules that you can now bring your dependents. And I've heard a story where someone has come to do a master's. He's brought his pregnant wife. who within a few weeks of arriving here has had twins at the expense of the NHS, and so it goes on. This is the subject of the greatest abuse all at this government's door. It's an absolute outrage. What they won't tell us when they say they're going to change the rules is when it's going to change. Frankly, if I was the boss, I would say it's going to change this week. You've given instructions, but they won't. They never say when it's going to happen.
Robert Jenner, the immigration minister, given obviously a tough time in the Commons yesterday, said we have to get on with this quickly. How many more months and years are they going to be saying that? We got on the front page of the Times today a move now to close down this immigration route that allows foreign staff to be hired to plug workforce gaps 20% under the going rates.
So I've got here what they call the skilled worker shortage occupations. There's about 50 jobs.
There are.
Right? But actually, I've also looked at the skilled worker list, which is about 200 different jobs with 800 job titles, of which the lowest paid includes seamstresses, dancers, ballerinas.
Very important. Ballerinas.
Very important, very skilled job. You would not want to see me try that, I'm sure. Being paid about 16 or 17,000. In the nicest possible way, that's about half the average salary. That is not a points-based skilled worker visa system by anybody's stretch of the imagination. And this government have introduced it. They need to take the blame for what's happened.
Looking at this list, though, you think we're short of every single industry. If you read that, every single engineer is on here, chemical scientists, physical scientists, and it just goes on and on and on. And particularly the trades as well, roofers. Maybe we do need some of these people.
I'm sorry, I'm not buying it at all. There's 800 job titles. About 30 years ago, we had net immigration of less than 100,000 people. And guess what? We were building more houses, our social care system was working, our healthcare system was working. This is a complete misleading con, and this government has got to be held accountable.
Back then, we didn't have millions on benefits who could be working.
That's right.
I can't see teachers on this list, which I find surprising, because we need a lot of teachers.
They're on the bigger list. This is the shortage occupation list.
The one as well that surprised me, apparently we're short of artists. Artists.
Come on.
So if you can make 80% of the going rate as an annual salary and you're an artist, you can come in.
It's a farce.
Who knew?
What's happened is, I'll tell you what's happened. The ministers who couldn't be bothered to dig into the detail, they've said to the civil servants, draw up a list, my dear chap. They haven't checked it, they haven't signed it off, they haven't applied common sense, and this is the result. And it's an absolute disgrace to our young students, our brilliant young people leaving school who want to be artists, who want to be web designers, who want to be dancers. They're missing out on the opportunities because big business are bringing low-skilled people from overseas. It's an outrage.
And the Home Secretary, the new Home Secretary, James Cleverly, who seems to be more accident-prone than the previous one.
Calamity Cleverly.
He's now talking about if the Rwanda scheme isn't the be-all and end-all, there are other countries we can do deals. Well, which ones are they then? And haven't we been round this block once or twice?
Why don't you just have a Department of Immigration that can actually process applications within a couple of weeks, and then you don't need any of this nonsense. All of this stuff is what they call a dead cat. It's throwing stuff out there in order to distract from their own woeful incompetence.
And the other dead cat, of course, is the silly row over the Elgin
that nobody's
marbles.
interested in whatsoever.
Do you think they're talking about that in your constituency?
They're not talking about that in any constituencies. They're talking about the cost of living, the immigration crisis, and the other key things. And the cost of energy, all this stuff. That's what people are talking about at home.
Absolutely. Richard, let me ask you about this encounter that Michael Gove had yesterday in the COVID inquiry, in which he said there is a growing body. He didn't use the word evidence, he said judgment about the fact that COVID was made in a lab in Wuhan. I could have told him that in summer 2020. And he got shut down and was told by the lawyer, this is not within the frames of reference. Why isn't that in the frames of reference?
I'll tell you why, because
it literally underpins everything that's happened.
It's utterly disgraceful that this lawyer and the chair of this inquiry, they have basically written their final report in their head. That's the reality. To protect the bureaucrats, the scientists, to diss Boris Johnson, and that's the whole agenda, and they won't have anything that might challenge that, whether it's Michael Gove challenging whether this was a man-made virus in the first place, and the increasing evidence looks very uncomfortable that it could well have been. And then the second thing is actually, they're not asking the question, should we have locked down at all, or were Sweden right? And the way they shut down Carl Hennigan a few weeks ago was truly shocking.
Professor Carl Hennigan.
But on the man-made thing, it's very important. I think it was very important he was allowed to continue, Richard, because if it was made in a lab, what sort of research was going on in that lab. That's the sort of research the government needs to know about so it can be better regulated and controlled.
Absolutely right. There is so much scandal around what really went on, the way that the establishment produced a letter to say it definitely came from the wet markets, when actually people were concerned at the time that there is a long trail of evidence that some real skullduggery went on. And I think some people very high up have got some serious questions to answer that the establishment is trying to prevent them answering, and it's very serious.
But shouldn't politicians who are giving evidence just push back against the lawyer when he says this is beyond the terms of agreement? Say, I'm sorry, I want to keep making the point because it is relevant, and it is relevant because we don't want this sort of research carried out again.
The truth is, Michael Gove, by his own admission, he said he was one of the bedwetters. He wanted to lock down earlier. He was always terrified. And so, actually, he doesn't want to push down. But look, this is...
His apology yesterday, his horrible, grovelling apology to the lawyer about the language that he used on his text messages. It was pathetic and it was infantile.
It's also not the point, again, is it, about the language? We don't care about that. We want to know the preparations
we want to know
and why it happened.
What went right, what went wrong, and how do we stop happening it again? And just to remind everybody, Sweden finished their inquiry a year and a half ago. Job done, lessons learned, moved on. Cost them, I think, less than 10 million quid.
Let's just remind ourselves of this apology yesterday. I think we can watch it. Here we go.
I want to take this opportunity, if I may, my lady, to apologise to the victims who endured so much pain, the families who endured so much loss as a result of the mistakes that were made by government in response to the pandemic. And as a minister responsible for the Cabinet Office and who was also close to many of the decisions that were made, I must take my share of responsibility for that. Politicians are human beings, we're fallible, we make mistakes and we make errors.
They're apologising for all the wrong things. They're not apologising for even having introduced lockdowns without any sort of cost-benefit analysis in the first place.
Exactly. So he didn't apologise to the nation for the appalling decisions they made that affected all of us in so many different ways. And still do, and will do. The cost of living crisis, inflation, all of this stuff is a direct result
printing money
of their decisions that went on and on in the face of the mounting evidence that they were making the wrong decisions. And do you remember that little slogan, we're making the right decisions at the right time based on world-leading advice? And it all turned out to be an absolute load of tosh.
And Boris, from the little bit we know so far, was at least trying to push back, but was overwhelmed by his own side.
Dear old Boris didn't realise until October, 6 months after, that the average age of those who sadly died with COVID was higher than the average life expectancy. And so that's why he came up with his slogan, get COVID, live longer. I mean, but the fact that they had kept that information from him, that they knew him, I think highlights just the disgrace of everything that went on, for which the whole nation is now paying the price.
Got to ask you about Lee Anderson. Is he going to join you? Our GB News presenter and Tory MP and Deputy Chairman.
The great thing about politics is, sometimes we can get quite animated, quite passionate. Lee's passionate, I'm passionate. We've had a row. It's a score draw. It's 1-1. We've agreed to draw stumps and we move on.
So he accused you of offering £400,000 to go and join the Reform Party. I'll join you for £400,000.
If only I had 400 grand in the back pocket.
I'll join you for £400,000.
Less.
I'm not going to make any more comment. Look,
I'm going for less.
We've had a row. We've moved on. We're focusing on the important things. Lee stood up, I think, in the House of Commons yesterday, fuming on behalf of his constituents. Quite right, because his constituents and across the country are absolutely appalled by what this government has deliberately elected to do and chosen to do with these immigration policies.
If you could poach any other Tory MPs, who would you want? Who's your top three, Richard Tice?
Let me be very clear. Let me be very clear. All conversations between me and Tory MPs are, of course, confidential, and I won't even say who I've met or admit anything. So there we are.
Okay.
That stays here.
Okay.
Excellent political answer there. Richard, good to see you. Right, still to come this morning, PMQs is kicking off in 2 hours. The Elgin Marbles will be high on the agenda.
The dead cat.
This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Morning, I'm Alex Deakin. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. The cold spell continues, a frosty start for many, and we've seen a covering of snow in places. We've still got sleet and snow showers coming in this morning over northern and eastern Scotland, southeast Scotland, northeast England. Could be quite icy out there this morning as well. Well, we've got those showers, and there's a few fog patches to be wary of. A bit more cloud across the south, 1 or 2 rain showers here, but that cloud breaking up through the morning. So actually for most of us, a fine day. Yes, it's going to be cold, 2 or 3 degrees for quite a few of us, but there will be plenty of sunshine. Temperatures a little higher across the south and southwest, with the clouds sticking around in the far southwest, and we'll continue with some showers here through the evening and overnight. There'll be rain showers here initially, but more sleet and snow showers coming into the northeast, so again things could well turn icy. And even in the south, we could just see a little bit of snow coming in over the moors in particular. For many, though, it's another dry, clear night, so another frosty start tomorrow morning. For anything, a little colder. Temperatures more widely down to -3 or -4. And again, some mist and fog patches. Thursday's a bit of a mishmash, again, for quite a few of us, just dry, fine and sunny, but more cloud in the south with some outbreaks of mostly rain on the south coast, but if it's a little further north, could provide some sleet and snow for a time. Further wintry showers keeping coming along some of those North Sea coasts. And again, it's going to be another pretty cold one with temperatures 3 or 4 at best.
And up next, the former First Minister of Northern Ireland, Arlene Foster, joining us in the studio to go through some of those job types and the shortages and the latest row over Brexit affecting Northern Ireland involving Dame Priti Patel. This is
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 10 o'clock on Wednesday the 29th of November. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce.
So scrap the shortage list. To tackle migration, Rishi Sunak under pressure to scrap a list of jobs which allow foreign workers to come here on lower pay to fill vacancies. And it includes, guess what, ballet dancers and musicians.
Sunak versus Starmer. The Prime Minister's questions gets underway in roughly 2 hours. Our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, can tell us what to expect.
Yes, so the first Prime Minister's questions since those massive net migration figures last week. Labour, traditionally seen as soft in immigration, but I do suspect Sir Keir Starmer will have something to say about that.
And Michael Gove says sorry at the COVID inquiry. The Secretary of State for Levelling Up apologised for his role in the pandemic, but he was slapped down by the inquiry chief when he had the temerity to say this.
There is a significant body of judgment that believes that the virus itself was man-made.
And royal race row. Sales of the royal book Endgame have been stopped in Holland after a Dutch version appeared to identify 2 family members accused of racism. We'll have the royal reporter who broke that story on very soon.
And Windsor Framework risk. The former Home Secretary Priti Patel says the Windsor Framework poses a risk to the integrity of the United Kingdom. Our very own Baroness Eileen Foster joins us in the studio to talk about it.
Let us know your thoughts on all of our talking points this morning. GBViews at gbnews.com. Did you watch I'm a Celebrity last night? How do you think Nigel is being depicted? Are you still going to vote to keep him in? First, though, the very latest news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Thank you and good morning. This is the latest from the GB Newsroom. Israel has received a further list of people to be released from Hamas captivity later today. The exchange of hostages for Palestinian prisoners will be the 6th in the extended truce between Israel and Hamas, which is set to expire tomorrow morning. Israel says the truce could be prolonged further, provided terror group Hamas continues to free at least 10 Israeli hostages per day. Israeli Defense Forces say the 12 hostages released last night include 10 Israelis and 2 Thai nationals in exchange for 30 Palestinian prisoners. A top professor at the Sheba Medical Centre says the hostages are now being medically evaluated and reunited with their families. A controversial new book about the royal family has been pulled from bookshelves in the Netherlands. Endgame has been taken off Dutch shelves amid reports the book names a member of the monarchy who allegedly asked about the skin colour of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex's son Archie before he was born. The Dutch publisher says an error occurred in the translation and is currently being rectified. The Labour Party will set out measures today aimed at protecting small businesses from antisocial behaviour. Shadow Business and Trade Secretary Jonathan Reynolds is addressing small business owners and members of the Essex Chamber of Commerce. He says legislation aiming to ensure invoices are paid on time will also be introduced if the party wins the next general election. He'll also renew a pledge to roll out new town centre police patrols to revitalise Britain's high streets. Shadow Women and Equalities Secretary Annalise Dodd says more needs to be done to keep the high street safe.
Lots of small businesses are just not being paid on time by big businesses, not because big businesses can't afford to pay them, but because they're using that delay to help with their cash flow. But it's a huge issue for those small businesses, so Labour would go a lot further and faster than the Conservatives have said that they would to tackle that. In too many of our town centres, it doesn't always feel safe when you want to go and shop, when you want to go and use those small businesses. We've got to take action, so Labour would have those town centre patrols, we'd be bringing back neighbourhood policing.
Millions of pounds will be invested into additional national parks and community spaces in a new environmental package. Environment Secretary Steve Barclay says the plans are designed to boost Britain's access to nature ahead of the upcoming COP28 summit in Dubai. The government promises further funding for existing protected landscapes and new projects covering over 200,000 hectares of land, including woodlands, rainforest and sustainable food production. Mr Barclay says the connection between the British people gained while in lockdown is vital to maintain.
Natural landscape, how we restore nature, how we give people access to nature is really important. And the £25 million they were announcing today to restore 34 habitats is really important. Having disadvantaged children able to access nature with a scheme that we're launching and continuing today. The 2 new community forests in Tees Valley and South Derbyshire will be hugely welcomed in those areas. And it's important that we also look at how we're restoring nature, how we're connecting people to nature.
The inquests into the deaths of 4 teenagers killed in a car crash in North Wales opens today. The bodies of Javon Hurst, Harvey Owen, Wilf Fitchett and Hugo Morris were found in a silver Ford Fiesta on November the 21st. A major search was launched for the A-level students after they failed to return home to Shropshire from an overnight camping trip to the Snowdonia area. The car had left the road at Garreg, overturned and was partially submerged in water. Content showing self-harm and posts relating to suicide online are still being pushed to millions of young people, according to a new report. A suicide prevention charity set up in the name of teenager Molly Russell found what they call a fundamental systemic failure by social media that will continue to cost young lives. They cite posts on TikTok and Instagram showing the related content being shared via algorithms and hashtags liked over 1 million times. Technology Secretary Michelle Donnellan says tech companies allowing the content to be circulated is despicable. And appointments with GPs online and over the phone can miss signs of serious illness, according to a report in the British Medical Journal. Such consultations, intended to be provisional, are increasing in surgeries due to understaffing and high demand. However, misdiagnosis and underdiagnosis has seen missed opportunities to identify and treat serious conditions like congenital heart disease and cancer. The study recommended clinicians ensure the patient knows what the next steps are in their care. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying Play GB News. Now back to Andrew and Bev.
Good morning, it's 10:07. Thank you for joining us on Britain's Newsroom this morning. Barry has got in touch to say no control of the Home Office, out-of-touch government, exasperated public who do understand the situation and the many problems that are looming. Prime Minister who seems totally inept. Greece, for example, 13 years of squabbling disaster by all parts of the government machine. I think it's reference to Elgin Marbles as well.
Yeah, and of course lots of you very exercised about the stitch-up we think that's going on with Nigel Farage. Margaret says ITVing are being disgraceful. All they're showing is when people are having a go at him.
And Virginia said, he said nothing wrong. This is Nigel. It is ITV who is stirring up trouble to get people watching. And then we were talking about this jobs list, which if you are one of these people, if this is your occupation, then you can come to the UK more easily. And it's got all sorts of interesting jobs on there.
Ballet dancers.
So I think you have to be a good ballet dancer. I don't think you can just like rock up and do a pirouette and get a visa.
And who judges who's a good artist and who's a bad artist? That's a completely subjective judgment.
Musicians as well.
Oh, I need lots of them. There's plenty busking on the London Underground every day, don't you anymore?
Graphic designers, agricultural and fishing trades, not elsewhere classified, a welding trade. You always need a welder. You needed a welder recently, Andrew?
Very simple. My father was a welder. Yeah, let's move on. Because again, it'd be a big row at Prime Minister's questions today, of course, about migration. Catherine Forster is our political correspondent who's in Westminster now. Catherine.
Yeah, so the first Prime Minister's questions since these huge net migration figures dropped last week. 750,000 people arrived last year. That is totally and utterly unprecedented, a very, very long way from the tens of thousands that the Conservatives promised for many years. And even in 2019, when Boris Johnson won the election, they promised to get net migration down. It was at that time only about 230,000. So I think it's highly likely that Sir Keir Starmer will go on this. Now, of course, lots of rumblings about what the government should or shouldn't do. And I mean, traditionally, Labour were always seen as sort of softer on immigration, but they've got an open goal, haven't they, really? Because the migration has gone up and up and up. And whereas before, when we were part of the EU, the government could say, well, this is out of our control because of free movement rules. The fact that migration is so high now is directly because of choices that the government has made. The Treasury likes having the workers coming in, contributing to the economy. And, you know, the education sector likes the foreign students, the health sector needs the workers. So very difficult for the government. Sir Keir Starmer might also go on COVID, the COVID inquiry ongoing, lots of damaging things coming out for the government. Maybe the Elgin marbles. I'm not sure that it's top of voters' list, but of course it was a missed opportunity to discuss migration with the Greek Prime Minister.
Absolutely it was. That's Catherine Forster in Westminster. Well, the Prime Minister is under pressure now to scrap an immigration route which allows foreign people to come here to plug workforce gaps. And some of them include, as we said, ballet dancers.
Yeah.
We're joined by GBNews presenter Arlene Foster. Arlene, I want to talk to you about Brexit in a moment, but first, on this list, the government have completely lost control of migration, haven't they? 745,000 in the last year, but that's the net figure.
Yeah.
The gross figure was well over 1 million.
Yeah. And Robert Jenrick acknowledged yesterday in the Commons that it was having a huge impact on public services, and I think that's why you get the anger in so many places, because people cannot get to see their GPs. They don't want to see them over the phone. They want to go in and see their GP. And we heard earlier on that it was having an impact, people only getting telephone calls with their GP. Of course, that's going to misdiagnose people. Of course it is, and it's self-evident. But in terms of the migration shortage list that you've been talking about this morning, that's set by an independent group of people. And the difficulty with the list is it keeps getting added to, and nothing gets taken away from it. So you've read out this morning a list, artists, all jobs. I mean, what does that mean?
I know.
I mean, I could call myself an artist.
Yeah, quite.
You could call yourself an artist.
I mean,
who decided? Yeah, I would be a very bad one as well. And so there's a huge list here. I am not saying that there are some on this list that need to be there. The whole point about Brexit was not to stop migration, but to control it. And at the moment, that's not happening. And you can see what's going on in the Conservative Party, and the Labour Party are taking advantage of that, obviously.
You mentioned Brexit. Interesting intervention overnight from Priti Patel, the former Home Secretary. She says the government has to reopen the Windsor Framework. Now, that was the deal that Rishi Sunak did to effectively, he said, solve the Northern Ireland problem. You're the former Northern Ireland Minister. Effectively, the Windsor Framework still keeps Northern Ireland under the control of the European Union.
Yes, so viewers and listeners will remember we had the protocol, first of all. The Windsor Framework was meant to come along and deal with the difficulties that the protocol had caused between GB and Northern Ireland. So goods coming from GB into Northern Ireland were being checked. And we're supposed to be in an internal market of the United Kingdom, according to the Act of Union. So there was great concern around that. As you know, the Northern Ireland Executive hasn't been sitting since last February as a result of that. And so the Windsor Framework was meant to deal with that. But unfortunately, we're told by Enterprise NI, which represents small businesses in Northern Ireland, that 71% of those businesses have had difficulties bringing goods from Great Britain into Northern Ireland. Now, that's a scandal, and it needs to be dealt with.
And Northern Ireland is being treated differently to the rest of the United Kingdom.
Yes, it is.
Because it adjoins Ireland, which is still in the European Union.
Yes, and of course that could have been dealt with, and Priti Patel says this in her piece, which she published overnight. It could have been dealt with very easily through alternative arrangements, through intelligence, through trusted traders being set in place, but instead the Government of Ireland and indeed the European Union used Northern Ireland basically as a weapon against the UK for having the temerity to leave the European Union. And we in Northern Ireland are suffering as a result of that.
How furious are people in Northern Ireland that you are being treated, in a sense, you could say, say, second-class citizens.
Well, people get very annoyed when they try to order something from Great Britain, as they do online, and they're told, no, we don't deliver to Northern Ireland. They get very upset, and coming up to Christmas, it happens more and more.
What sort of products are they?
A whole range of products, because a lot of people in Great Britain, if they're a small business in Great Britain, cannot be bothered with the paperwork that's needed to send stuff to Northern Ireland. So although they could send it, they think, no, I'm not bothering about that. I can't, it's taking up too much of my time. I would have to employ somebody to do the paperwork. Why would you do that? So they're just themselves stopping delivering to Northern Ireland, and that's a real problem.
But we all remember Rishi Sunak sort of hailing this as a triumph, don't we? I mean, walking down and saying, well, I've solved the Northern Ireland Brexit.
He totally oversold it, Bev. I mean, I think there were improvements under the Windsor framework, but to sell it as the greatest thing, as we would say at home, since sliced bread, was the wrong thing to do, because Northern Ireland people just looked at it and went, sorry, no, it's not the greatest thing, so why are you doing this?
And we're still under the control of the European Union, and we've still got the trading problems. By overselling it in that way, it rather challenges his integrity.
Well, I think it's a real problem, and I said it at the time, if he had come over and said, look, this is as far as I've been able to get with the European Union, I know it's not perfect, but it's an improvement, I think people would have said, yeah, we recognise that, thank you. Can we keep trying now to do this? But instead he tried to sell it as something it wasn't, and I think that's a real problem. And it's interesting, isn't it, that Pretty is saying now, to be fair, she voted against the Windsor framework when it was in the House of Commons, so she's being consistent in relation to that, and she's basically saying, look, we thought the protocol was temporary, we were told it was temporary when we voted for it, and now we need to step up and protect the internal market of the United Kingdom.
And she says, very interesting expression, the government has got to act over the tentacles of the EU.
Yes.
Tentacles. That's a very, very emotive expression, isn't it?
But there is a democratic deficit, of course, in Northern Ireland, because we have to take EU rules and regulations.
Yeah.
But there's no democratic accountability for those rules. We don't have MEPs, we don't want MEPs, but they're making the rules that apply to us in Northern Ireland.
Let me just ask you, we had these awful figures, as we just said this last week, about these record migration figures. Is Keir Starmer remotely landing a punch on the Conservative Party at an opportunity like that?
Well, you know, one of the great joys about being in opposition is that you can say, if we were in power, we would do X, Y and Z. And I listened to Yvette Cooper yesterday saying she would cut migration, and you go, well, how are you going to do that, Yvette? How are you going to do that? Is it going to be by getting rid of the shortage occupation list? Are you going to raise the level of wages to £40,000, as Suella Braverman wanted to do? Or are you just going to have a cap and say, once we reach this cap every year, no more are coming in? What are your plans? We haven't heard those.
They're still wishy-washy.
And one of her colleagues suggested at the weekend, Darren Jones, I think his name, Shadow Chief Secretary, we're going to get it to 200,000. That just dropped out of nowhere. And not a...
Just pick a figure.
And no explanation of how he was going to do that. Great if he could...
It would be excellent for people living here and wanting access to public services, yes.
I was in Ireland for a few days last week. It's a big issue in Ireland too, isn't it, immigration? Big issue. You could feel the tension on the streets.
It's a huge issue, and of course we had the riots in Dublin last week, and they were dismissed as being far right, and undoubtedly there are people in those communities trying to whip up bad behaviour and rioting and what have you. But there is a concern, Andrew, and I think it's wrong to ignore that concern, that there are a lot of people coming into Ireland, in Dublin and in rural areas as well, and they are changing the face of Ireland, as it were. And people are concerned about that, and I think it's right that that should be talked about. But in Dublin, you can't talk about it, because if you do, then...
You're a horrible racist.
You're a horrible racist.
Yeah, well, we're horrible racists if we talk about it here too, of course.
Well, we talk about everything here. There's no topic we won't discuss. Arlene, thank you so much.
Great to see you.
Master there. Right, still to come this morning, Michael Gove was told we're not going there when he said that COVID was man-made at the COVID inquiry. We are going to go there. We don't mind going there. In fact, I can't wait to go there. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My
CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
10:22, you're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
So hearings continue in the COVID inquiry with former Health Secretary Sajid Javid and former Deputy Prime Minister Dominic Raab today.
Yesterday we had Michael Gove, who was Cabinet Office Minister at the time, who gave this apology.
I want to take this opportunity, if I may, my lady, to apologise to the victims who endured so much pain, the families who endured so much loss as a result of the mistakes that were made by government in response to the pandemic. And as a minister responsible for the Cabinet Office and who was also close to many of the decisions that were made, I must take my share of responsibility for that. Politicians are human beings, we're fallible. We make mistakes and we make errors.
Honestly, it makes me despair. Well, author and co-founder of the children's campaign group Us For Them, Molly Kingsley, is in the studio with us now. I'm so glad you're here, Molly. You've watched this inquiry in such granular detail, haven't you?
You can bet.
Oh, I'm losing it.
What is it like for you? Because I know what it's like for me. Let's just share for a moment how frustrating it is to watch it.
I have to say, I feel slightly on the brink. It is really frustrating, and for a number of reasons. You know, first of all, because you have ministers yesterday like Gove, who was obviously so well prepared, I suspect briefed very carefully by lawyers. You know, he knew exactly what he was saying. I suspect he had an idea what he was going to be asked, and that really came across. And against that, you have this very one-sided, almost myopic view from the inquiry and the inquiry KC. So, you know, again, yesterday, we were told by the inquiry KC that, of course, you know, all public health advice pointed in one direction, the need for faster and sooner restrictions. And, you know, that is the very matter which many of us think the inquiry is there to determine.
What did you make of it when Hugo Keith pushed back when Michael said about the fact that, you know, there is a growing body of... He didn't use the word evidence, I would, but he used the word judgment, that this is a man-made virus from the lab in Wuhan, and he was quickly told this is not within the terms of reference of this inquiry. Why, Molly?
I mean, it's incredible, isn't it? So the reason they gave was because this came out after the terms of reference were set. Well, change the terms
hang on, they should have been... Why weren't they in the terms of reference to start with?
Why weren't they in terms of reference? Yeah, I mean, the reason, again, they've given is because this is a UK inquiry. It's looking at UK matters of pandemic preparedness. But, of course, you can't look at it in isolation. And, in fact... You know, our leaders are asking that we join an international alliance via the WHO. Yeah. So how can we consider this at a national level?
And if Gove's right that there is this view that it was started in a lab when research is being done on other viruses, we have to know about that, because if that sort of research is being done in labs here, it could be triggered here, and we might want to restrict that sort of research or regulate it better.
Absolutely, Andrew. And, you know, of course we have to know about it, because also it is likely, if it was the case, that it tempered the entire pandemic response. You know, we need to understand what was known. Was that responsible for some of this very exaggerated messaging we saw at the beginning? Who knows? And, you know, at least these are valid questions to be considered, and for the inquiry to say, no, sorry, you know, out of our terms of reference is surprising.
But there's nothing in there about motive, Molly. And how do you include that in the terms of reference, I suppose, is the point. Because if this is a man-made virus in a lab, and even the FBI in America have now pretty much said that the weight of evidence is there, then who had a vested interest in finding a pandemic to get us out of this? Who had a vested interest in saying the world has to stay locked up until we can get that very profitable drug out? It all has to start with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think as soon as you begin looking for motive, you are on difficult ground, legally and for this inquiry. I don't see this inquiry
anybody?
This would not be the forum for that. I mean, potentially, if there were ever later down the line criminal proceedings, that would be the right legal forum. I very much doubt that's going to happen here, at least not for the lab leak. There may be other elements in time.
Yeah.
But you can at least look to dive into the evidence that exists, much of which is in the public domain. So the COVID Consensus, a book by Toby Green, has chapters on the lab leak theory. They are backed up by evidence. Why isn't this
Matt Ridley as well?
Matt Ridley, yeah.
And Michael Gove could have pushed back against the lawyer and carried on pushing back. I mean, what's he going to do? Be thrown out? It's not a courtroom. It's not. What's he going to do? Dump a contempt of court?
Yeah.
He could have kept pushing back. He's one of the most articulate advocates in the cabinet.
He could have done, and we saw that yesterday, actually, throughout. I mean, he really did play it very well.
He really took on the lawyer for the Scottish government, didn't he? He really took her on, big time.
And actually, the lawyer, in some ways, I thought the most interesting bit of yesterday was the bit that wasn't reported in the press because it came at the very end, which was the KC for the children's organisations, who really was, you know, he was great, actually, very adversarial, said, you know, who was considering kids? Kids weren't being considered, were there? You know, was Williamson involved in these momentous decision to close schools? And actually Gove, you know, he fought back, but it was a very interesting part of the inquiry that deserved more
we've
coverage.
Said it before, and we'll say it again. There were no children in the frames of references if it wasn't for you and your organisation, who've done some phenomenal lobbying and amazing good work in this area. What have you recently uncovered about the Ethics Committee? This is interesting.
Yeah, so this is an incredible story, I think. It's in a new book that we've just written. It's called The Accountability Deficit. And for the course of that book, so myself and one of my co-authors are both lawyers by background, and we had a long summer of researching, going through all the minutes of various of these committees, and we stumbled across a committee that had existed for much of the pandemic called the Moral and Ethical Advisory Group. This is all in the public domain. The minutes are there. If you look at the minutes, it's a chapter in the book. You look at the minutes, and it's a chapter in the book too. What you see is this committee existed and was meant to advise on ethical issues. At the beginning of the pandemic, it started advising on, you know, ethical issues relating to lockdown, relating to care homes, relating to the rollout of the vaccine. Documented in the minutes is the fact that the committee started giving, let's just say, inconvenient advice about the ethics of many of these measures. In particular, they raised serious concerns in writing about the ethics of COVID passes and the rollout of the vaccine to children, at which point the committee were gradually sidelined. They were then given a complete 3-month sabbatical over the critical moment of the rollout of the kids' jabs. Then they were effectively grounded completely a year before the term.
And by whom, Molly? By who?
We don't know. So the paper trail documents, and I really would recommend the book. It's a very big, unreported story. There's a whole different issue in that, so you effectively have the exclusive on this.
Yeah.
But it is all there in black and white in the minutes. Also, actually, in black and white is a very interesting disclosure that Chris Whitty is recorded as having counselled...
He's the Chief Medical Officer.
Chris Whitty, Chief Medical Officer, at one point after the committee had been giving these quite awkward recommendations about, in this case, COVID passes. Chris Whitty is recorded as having counselled the committee to stop putting recommendations in writing.
What?
Yeah. Which is, I'm very glad that is your reaction. That was my reaction when I came across this. It is in black and white. There are footnoted minutes. This was, I had a cup of tea at the time and I spat it out when I saw
I'm not
this.
even remotely surprised.
And you think, how is the COVID inquiry not picking up on this? So yesterday, there was a very big discussion about organisational structures. Michael Gove, as Cabinet Office Minister, would have been instrumental in those structures. Why was this not raised? Why wasn't it raised to Whitty? Will it be raised tomorrow to Hancock? I very much doubt it.
And do we know the membership of that committee?
We do. It was public membership, and for the purposes of the chapter in the book we wrote, we spoke to 2 former members to confirm key aspects, and they were confirmed off record, and I can't reveal who those are.
No, of course.
That is documented in the book, and it needs to be covered. This is clearly a public interest.
Remind us the name of the book, your book, Molly. What's the book called?
Yeah, it's called The Accountability Deficit, and it was just out last week, and it's available on Amazon.
Brilliant.
Fascinating.
Thank you, Molly.
Fascinating.
Thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, still to come, we are talking about the dangers of digital. A new study, guess what, shows GP appointments over the phone or online risk harming patients. Who would have known that then?
Stop the press. And ITV bosses have provoked fury with Farage supporters with new racism allegations that were recorded a couple of years ago, and it's ambiguous. He even knew what he was being told to say. He's attempting to become king of the jungle. Will you help him? That and much more after your morning's news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Bev, thank you. This is the latest from the GB Newsroom. Israel has received a further list of people to be released from Hamas captivity later today. The exchange of hostages for Palestinian prisoners will be the 6th in the extended truce between Israel and Hamas, which is set to expire tomorrow morning. Israel says the truce could be prolonged further, provided terror group Hamas continues to free at least 10 Israeli hostages per day. Israeli Defence Forces say the 12 hostages released last night include 10 Israelis and 2 Thai nationals in exchange for 30 Palestinian prisoners. A controversial new book about the royal family has been pulled from bookshelves in the Netherlands. Endgame has been taken off Dutch shelves amid reports the book names members of the monarchy who allegedly asked about the skin colour of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex's son Archie before he was born. The Dutch publisher says an error occurred in the translation and is currently being rectified. Labour will set out measures aimed at protecting small businesses from antisocial behaviour. Shadow Business and Trade Secretary Jonathan Reynolds is addressing small business owners in Essex. He says ensuring invoices are paid on time and rolling out town centre police patrols are important and will be introduced if the party wins the next general election. And millions of pounds will be invested into additional national parks and community spaces. Environment Secretary Steve Barclay says the plans are designed to boost Britain's access to nature ahead of the COP28 summit in Dubai. The government promises further funding for existing protected landscapes and new projects covering over 200,000 hectares of land. You can get more on all of those stories by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
For stunning gold and silver coins you'll always value, Rosland Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2680 and 1.1555 euros. The price of gold, £1,607 and 89 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 7,442 points.
Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Still to come this morning, why haven't we seen more of Nigel Farage in the jungle?
Because he's being stitched up.
Funny that. Right, this is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
Affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
10:37 with Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, and with an awful lot's got to be said of viewers and listeners.
That's right. Yes, a lot of you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Right, we haven't seen as much of Nigel Farage in the jungle.
Which you predicted.
Well, I did.
She doesn't like to say "I told you so," but she just seems to say it in most programmes.
It's my favourite thing. We're not coming to you two yet. Shush, you two. Right. Nigel apparently has been accused of making a racist comment in a privately recorded video message on a platform called Cameo.
Nigel's team responded to this with the following statement.
They say over the last few years, Nigel has filmed over 4,000 cameo messages for fans and supporters. This includes videos for people's weddings, birthdays, stag do's, in-jokes between friends, and even people who are ill in hospital.
And when Nigel first joined Cameo, there was a concerted effort by Remain supporters to hijack the platform to embarrass Nigel by getting to read out obscure, rude words and in-jokes between friends.
So it's now widely reported that some of these slipped through the net, as Nigel is a classic boomer dad. In the video, Nigel was asked by a customer on Cameo to read a message they'd written for a friend. Had Nigel known that the message he was asked to read contained an obscure, offensive word, he would not have made the video.
Well, David Maddox is the political editor at the Daily Express Online and joins us now. David, this word, we're not going to use it on the TV or for our listeners on the radio, but you know and I know and Bev knows that there are a number of interpretations of what the word can mean.
Yes, indeed. Well, actually, when I saw the word, I won't repeat it, but when I saw the word, I thought of the local beer when I was growing up in Norfolk, which was actually that word. So that was my first reaction to it. But I can see why it can be interpreted as racist, but it's a little bit of a stretch, I think.
What does it tell us, David, that somebody at ITV/ITN News have been trawling through all of the material that Nigel might have put out in the last, well, 3 years? This was a clip from 2020, to effectively kind of stitch him up, it looks like, maybe.
Yeah, I think this is a stitch-up. I have to say it's quite outrageous, actually. I mean, are we supposed to believe it's a total coincidence that Nigel's on an ITV show where he has contractually no contact with the outside world, is unable to touch his phone or anything like that, and suddenly, on the day of voting for I'm a Celebrity, they're planning to wheel out this allegation of racism, which he can't respond to and won't even know is happening, frankly. I mean, this is the point. You know, now you could say, well, it's different parts of ITV, but they know what the rules of I'm a Celebrity is. It's still the same channel, and it's clearly a stitch-up. I have asked ITV for a comment. They haven't bothered to get back to me. But, you know, I mean, I'm loath to criticise other journalists and other media outlets because we all have a job to do, but I think this has crossed the line, in my view.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Thank you, David. David Maddox there. So we are joined in the studio by former Labour MP Stephen Pound and former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, to discuss this. Dawn, let me come to you first.
No, because you told us to shut up just now, so we're not going to talk to you now, are we, Stephen? No.
Somebody has to keep some...
I'm sorry, we're working to rule.
Somebody has to keep some decorum around here. Right, Dawn.
That's a place in Hertfordshire, isn't it?
Is Nigel being stitched up, and wasn't he always going to be?
Yes, he was. I mean, this comes on the back of Kevin Lygo, who runs the ITV, saying, you know, using a rude gesture to refer to him, despite his company paying Nigel 1.5 million.
I thought that was really deeply shocking.
It's so childish. It's pathetic. And these are people running TV.
And doing it, Dawn, in a very public place.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I'm going, oh, that's really funny, isn't it? And then the lovely, cuddly-wuddly Lorraine, who's not, then, you know, being just body-shaming him, basically. Now, if a man had done that about a woman, you know, their feet
So just to remind you what she said then, she said that Nigel, is he 50...
57,
58,
yeah,
something like that.
same age as me.
And Lorraine Kelly took an intake of breath and she said, I thought he was much older than that. It just shows you get the face that you deserve. There's nobody else in public life that would be the butt of so many jokes like that. Cruel, personal attacks.
This is all based on his bottom as well, isn't it? But, I mean, the thing is, look, it's like... Disagree with Nigel's politics all you want. Disagree with anyone's politics all you want. It doesn't give you a reason to be personally vile to them. I just don't understand that. So look, the way reality TV works, right, OK, it's nothing to do with reality. There's no basis in reality. Every part of it is orchestrated. It really is. It's literally scripted.
Yeah.
People are told, people are playing roles that are given to them by ITV. I mean, obviously, you are self to a certain extent, but basically the producers are pushing this in the way they want it to go. And so they want Nigel as the pantomime villain.
Yeah.
And that is
And they don't want him to win.
They don't want him to win, and this is what they're setting him up to do.
Yeah. Here's the thing. They're worried.
That he might win.
People are worried because Nigel has come across really well.
As I knew he would, because he's a nice bloke.
As you said, yeah, but apart from that slightly unfortunate nude shower scene, which I'm still trying to get out of my head. But look, he's come across as amiable and perfectly happy to talk about Brexit. He's come across well.
He has.
I would say, you said back at the time, and I wish I'd put a few bob in it, he was going to win.
Yeah,
so
I did.
People are obviously worried. As to actually the scripting, I think people like Nella Rose, I'm not entirely sure how that she can be scripted. I think, she was totally off message, in fact, off the wall in some of her earlier comments.
This is the influencer.
She's encouraged,
But the point I was going to say is I think that those people have been placed there like chess pieces. This person will not get on with that person.
Yeah.
And I think Nigel's actually risen above it, and I think he's done damn well.
Yeah.
I'm going to vote to keep him in. I don't normally take part in that but apparently you can get 5 free votes if you download the app.
If you download the I'm a Celebrity app,
you can vote for him 5 times. So
without any charge.
I don't know. I'm slightly conflicted here. I'd quite like to have him back here because
I'd like to know
we want him to win.
Going on.
OK, right. OK, 5 votes.
5 votes.
God, it's like the Labour Party back in the 70s.
Yes, it is.
Right. Can we talk about this story on the front page of the Telegraph today? Patients are at risk from a virtual GP session.
Who'd have known that then?
Who knew?
Who'd have known that?
If you see the GP down the line rather than in person where they can take your temperature and maybe check your blood pressure, it might result in you actually losing your life.
But how much diagnosis, and every GP will tell you this, is done by sitting with people, talking, looking at their body language, looking at their nuance, looking at just how they're behaving in general. It's not, you could talk to someone on the phone and you don't know if they're lying in bed with a broken leg.
Absolutely.
You can't tell anything from a phone call.
No.
And people on the phone always put on, I don't know, almost an image of as to what they're not. And I just think in particular for, I don't know, it sounds a cliche, but for elderly people who are not au fait with down the phone technology, etc., etc., and for people who have hearing disabilities.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been married to a guitarist my entire life. I can barely hear a damn thing these days.
Yeah.
Especially his music, which is a very good thing. But it's just, I think, can't we just go and see GPs anymore?
And do you know the political journalist Nick Robinson tells this story? He got actually into a doctor's surgery. He wasn't seeing his own doctor, but his own GP walked past him, someone stopped and said, "You look terrible.
Yeah.
You've lost a lot of weight.
Yeah.
Come in and see me."
I've heard that.
He was sent straight to hospital for tests, riddled with cancer, which he got over, but it's because his GP saw him in the flesh.
Yeah.
And he's a young man, relatively.
As many as a third now, Stephen, of GP appointments are virtual. This is, again, I'm sorry, but it's another hangover from the pandemic. Everybody thought it's OK to do this online, and we need a real sanity check.
I know, it's like counsellors who say they don't do advice surgeries anymore because that... But look, when I was on duty at the Middlesex Hospital back in the 70s, I can remember, one of the consultants...
You were a reporter, weren't you?
I was a porter, yes.
But I didn't want him to think you were a doctor, Steve.
You were a brain surgeon.
The 1870s.
Yes.
But I can still remember one of the consultants saying to the junior doctors, he says, when you see a patient, first of all, you use your ears, listen to what they have to say, then you use your eyes, and only then do you use your mouth to actually make a prescription.
Interesting.
And I think that is the way it should be now. I think that the idea that you can actually make that sort of a diagnosis over the phone or, even through Zoom, it's for the birds. But look, why would we even be thinking about this? What on earth is wrong with the face-to-face consultation? What is possibly wrong with that?
And where is the British Medical Association, which has taken doctors out on strikes for months and months and months? Haven't heard a word from them about this.
I know.
Well, because they're on strike.
But we have a country run by technocrats. If you ever see Rishi Sunak feel utterly aroused by what he's saying, he's talking about technology.
I don't want to think about him being aroused.
This is the AI nightmare.
Excited by and quite libidinous at the idea of AI.
I know.
Taking over our life. And somebody needs to stop him and go, hang on a minute, this is not the solution to all of the world's ills, is not more tech.
Look, there's a place for this, OK? I think it serves a valuable purpose for some people, so there should be the option. But we should also have the option to have face-to-face contact with our GP.
Yeah, and that option should be for the persistent ones who want to see a GP every week, who are persistent.
Well, you know and I know that you could end up with an AI doctor at the other end. A person's not even a real person.
Oh, it's coming.
We're moving to a sort of vicarious life. Everything is lived, through the medium of technology. It's flipping terrifying.
I know, geeks are running the world. What do you think about this jobs list, Stephen, of the people that can come here more easily because they appear on the list of jobs that we need?
Did you know
Some of them we do need,
there was a major shortage of ballerinas and bricklayers? And in fact, if you were a bricklaying ballerina... This is ridiculous.
Isn't it?
There was a thing in the paper yesterday about a farmer in Cornwall bringing people in from Turkmenistan because he couldn't get anybody locally. I mean, what's the matter with this country? country.
I know.
Well, that's because you've got lots of young British-born youngsters who won't pick fruit. They're sat at home playing on their iPhone.
Yeah, and there's millions on benefits, Stephen.
Yes.
Far too many on benefits. You should get them off. But I would also, Dawn, I would say to those asylum seekers who are in all these hotels around the country, oi, you ain't going to get staying for free. You're going to go and pick the fruit, pick the vegetables. Why not?
Well, yeah, but is that then going to encourage them to start going down the road of paying us and
no, you don't pay. They don't get paid for it. That's in return for their board and lodge.
OK, how are you
work.
going to enforce that to happen, though? How is that going to happen? Are you going to have sort of almost like a chain gang where people are overseeing them all the time?
Yeah. in orange overalls.
In orange overalls.
Yeah.
A bit like my suit this morning.
In fact, you've auditioned for the role. There we are.
So, Andrew, I'll tell you a couple of odd things. I mean, we talked about my life in the 1870s, and I must admit, I do go back a little bit.
Yeah.
We used to in the East End of London, it's a place I don't know very much about, but some people may. People used to go hop picking.
My parents used to do that for their holidays.
But in my part of the world, in West London, we used to go spud bashing, which was we'd go picking potatoes. We used to go up to Hertfordshire, and it'd be a couple of days' work. We'd sleep in a barn, and it was good money for a teenage kid bunking off. In the school holiday. But it just strikes me that we've got a major problem here. I think your solution is probably not totally feasible here. But what is feasible is if we actually give some of these people permission to come into the country, the people who are entitled, and then start paying a decent agricultural wage. Because don't forget, there used to be a thing called the Agricultural Wages Board, which actually set them because a lot of farmers employed one or two people and wages were pretty low. I remember dealing with cases when I was in the union about a shepherd who's actually being deducted money for the food for his dog, and things like that. But if the money's OK, I think we can get people to do it. But there's a mindset problem here. And I think what you said about mobile phones, people do seem to be more in tune with that kind of life. Let's get out there, get your hands dirty and start picking. Oh, you don't have to pick potato. You can pick strawberries. What would be more delightful?
Talking of getting your hands dirty, should we talk about Omid Scobie?
Unanimous groaning here.
He is the author of Endgame. This is the book about the royal family. We cannot say the name. I'm bossy again, Dawn Newsom, today. I've got my hair up.
Well, it's two names we now know.
We cannot say either name of the royal people who have been accused of being racist. This was not in his book, but it made it into a Dutch translation.
And he doesn't know how it got in there, Dawn. He doesn't know how it got in there.
I know.
He put it in there deliberately to cause a PR storm.
But no.
Just so now it's being pulped and everybody's talking about it worldwide.
He didn't do the translation. He doesn't speak Dutch.
Right. So how did the translators know the names if they weren't in the book?
Probably.
Look, any case, it's
he's lying through his false teeth.
Do you see? What are you saying about his teeth? They're glorious.
Everything about him's false.
Look, if he lied about his age, because everybody in TV lies about their age, evidently. No, quite.
But you lie about my age.
No, I didn't. That was actually telling but if anyone's asking, it's my birthday in a week's time. But
happy birthday.
Thank you very much. But I mean, this is the whole book is a fairy story for a start. It doesn't tell us anything we don't know, and obviously it's like he's got very good sources. The only people that come out of this book connected to the royal family without any slurs against their name are Meghan and Harry.
Funny that.
It's really weird.
And he's not friends with them, and he's not their mouthpiece, and he hasn't talked to their associates. But they have to put a statement out disassociating from this book, don't they?
Why haven't they done that?
Because they're up to their neck in it.
Well, it's like, but she had with the first book, whatever that was called, I can't remember.
This statement, obviously,
freedom, wasn't it?
Yeah, but
something like that
only came out. It's like, didn't you help out with this?
She did
in the High Court.
If you remember, if we go back, this whole story started when they did that sit-down interview with Oprah Winfrey. And Meghan Markle said somebody in the royal family asked how dark Archie's skin would be.
Well, could I just ask you to suspend belief for a moment and imagine me as a young man with a great shocking head of red hair.
Even more difficult.
I had very, very red hair.
Right.
And when my daughter was...
Did people call you Ginge?
They called me many things. Copper Knob, I seem to remember, was one of them. Anyway, but I can still remember somebody saying to me, I wonder if your daughter will have red hair.
Yeah. Of course.
And it was I didn't say racist, anti-reddist. How dare you do that? I just said, I hope she doesn't, but I prefer to call mine Auburn.
So you would see that in the same. You would see that in the same kind of sort of Venn diagram.
I think so. I honestly.
Curiosity.
I mean, was it done out of malice? I don't believe so.
Curiosity.
Well, that's the key thing. Curiosity and malice. And your Venn overlap is the key here.
Yeah.
Omid's answer to this question is the way it was phrased to him from an anonymous source. source, obviously, who we don't know who this is. But there was...
Called Meghan Markle.
There was concern about the colour of the child's skin, not speculation about
that's
the
not
baby.
true.
I'm just saying what he said.
Yeah.
Not speculation about what a baby looks like, which every family does.
Yes,
every family does that. But it was concern about the colour of the child's skin.
As a royal. As a royal.
Say.
And that's him changing, moving the goalpost, because that's not what was reported.
Well, I think, don't forget, Omid Scobie's got skin in the game here. He was actually knocked off the list of accredited correspondents. And he's pretty bitter about this. I think he's got an axe to grind, and he's grinding it quite well for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, thank you both so much. After the break, we're going to be talking to the Dutch journalist who broke this story about the Dutch version of the book. Don't go anywhere. This is Britain's Newsroom.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning, I'm Alex Deakin. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. The cold spell continues, a frosty start for many, and we've seen a covering of snow in places. We've still got sleet and snow showers coming in this morning over northern and eastern Scotland, southeast Scotland, northeast England. Could be quite icy out there this morning as well. Well, we've got those showers, and there's a few fog patches to be wary of. A bit more cloud across the south, 1 or 2 rain showers here, but that cloud breaking up through the morning. So actually, for most of us, a fine day. Yes, it's going to be cold, 2 or 3 degrees for quite a few of us, but there will be plenty of sunshine. Temperatures a little higher across the south and southwest. With the clouds sticking around in the far southwest, and we'll continue with some showers here through the evening and overnight. There'll be rain showers here initially, but more sleet and snow showers coming into the northeast, so again things could well turn icy. And even in the south, we could just see a little bit of snow coming in over the moors in particular. For many, though, it's another dry, clear night, so another frosty start tomorrow morning. For anything, a little colder. Temperatures more widely down to -3 or -4. And again, some mist and fog patches. Thursday's a bit of a mishmash, again, for quite a few of us, just dry, fine and sunny, but more cloud in the south with some outbreaks of mostly rain on the south coast, but if it's a little further north, could provide some sleet and snow for a time. Further wintry showers keeping coming along some of those North Sea coasts. And again, it's going to be another pretty cold one with temperatures 3 or 4 at best.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Well, thanks, Alex. Still to come, as billed, the Dutch journalist Rick Evers is going to be talking about the bombshell royal book Endgame and the so-called translation errors in the Netherlands. Right. You're Britain's
so
Newsroom
cynical.
On GB News. People tell I am cynical. It's a PR stunt to sell the...
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these 3.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only three people you can trust in life: your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, 11 a.m. on Wednesday, the 29th of November. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Sunak versus Starmer. Prime Minister's Questions gets underway in roughly an hour. We're going to be going live to the Commons for all the action.
And that royal race row, sales of the royal book Endgame being recalled in Holland after the Dutch version apparently identified two family members accused of racism. We're going to speak to the royal reporter who broke that story. He thinks the recall is lacking a little urgency.
I'm in a local bookstore now in the Netherlands, and it's Wednesday, a day after the news broke. There it still is.
And premiering on Saturday, Peter Andre and Ellie Costello will be presenting a brand new show on GB News every Saturday morning, and they're going to be here to tell us all about it.
I've met him a few times. He's a really nice bloke, Peter Andre. Really nice bloke.
I've never met him.
Yeah, and he'll be a great double act with our Ellie, of course.
Right, let us know your thoughts this morning. GB Views at gbnews.com. First, though, here's Tatiana Sanchez in the GB Newsroom.
Bev, thank you. Your top stories from the GB Newsroom. We break with some breaking news. An inquest has found all 4 teenagers drowned following a car crash in North Wales. The bodies of Javon Hurst, Harvey Owen, Will Fitchett and Hugo Morris were found in a silver Ford Fiesta on November the 21st. That car was found at the road in Garreg, overturned and partially submerged in water. The North Wales coroner announced the results of the inquiry in a brief 4-minute hearing. A major search was launched for the A-level students after they failed to return home to Shropshire from an overnight camping trip to the Snowdonia area. Israel has received a further list of people to be released from Hamas captivity later today. The exchange of hostages for Palestinian prisoners will be the 6th in the extended truce between Israel and Hamas, which is set to expire tomorrow morning. Israel says the truce could be prolonged further, provided terror group Hamas continues to free at least 10 Israeli hostages per day. Israeli Defense Forces say the 12 hostages released last night include 10 Israelis and 2 Thai nationals in exchange for 30 Palestinian prisoners. A top professor at the Sheba Medical Centre says the hostages are being medically evaluated and reunited with their families. A controversial new book about the royal family has been pulled from the bookshelves in the Netherlands. Endgame has been taken off Dutch shelves amid reports the book names members of the monarchy who allegedly asked about the skin colour of Harry and Meghan's son before he was born. The Dutch publisher says an error occurred in the translation and is currently being rectified. Labour will set out measures today aimed at protecting small businesses from antisocial behaviour. Shadow and Business and Trade Secretary Jonathan Reynolds is addressing small business owners in Essex. He says ensuring invoices are paid on time and rolling out town centre police patrols are important and will be introduced if the party wins the next general election. Shadow Women and Equalities Secretary Annalise Dodd says more needs to be done to keep the high street safe.
So small businesses are just not being paid on time by big businesses, not because big businesses can't afford to pay them, but because they're using that delay to help with their cash flow. But it's a huge issue for those small businesses, so Labour would go a lot further and faster than the Conservatives have said that they would to tackle that. In too many of our town centres, it doesn't always feel safe when you want to go and shop, when you want to go and use those small businesses. We've got to take action, so Labour would have those town centre patrols, we'd be bringing back neighbourhood policing.
Millions of pounds will be invested into additional national parks and community spaces. The plans are designed to boost Britain's access to nature ahead of the COP28 summit in Dubai. The government promises further funding for existing protected landscapes and new projects covering over 200,000 hectares of land. Environment Secretary Steve Barclay says the connection the British people gained while in lockdown is vital to maintain.
Natural landscape, how we restore nature, how we give people access to nature is really important. And the £25 million they were announcing today to restore 34 habitats is really important. Having disadvantaged children able to access nature with a scheme that we're launching and continuing today. The 2 new community forests in Tees Valley and South Derbyshire will be hugely welcomed in those areas. And it's important that we also look at how we're restoring nature, how we're connecting people to nature.
Content showing self-harm and posts relating to suicide online are still being pushed to millions of young people, according to a new report. A suicide prevention charity set up in the name of teenager Molly Russell found what they call a fundamental systemic failure by social media that will continue to cost young lives. They cite posts on TikTok and Instagram showing the related content being shared via algorithms and hashtags liked over 1 million times. Technology Secretary Michelle Donnellan says tech companies allowing the content to be circulated is despicable. And appointments with GPs online and over the phone can miss signs of serious illness, according to a report in the British Medical Journal. Such consultations, intended to be provisional, are increasing in surgeries due to understaffing and high demand. However, misdiagnosis and underdiagnosis has seen missed opportunities to identify and treat serious conditions such as congenital heart disease and cancer. The study recommended clinicians ensure the patient knows what the next steps are in their care. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying Play GB News. Now back to Andrew and Bev.
Good morning. It is 11:06 on what day is it? Is it Wednesday today?
It certainly is, yeah.
These days go a bit strange, don't they? Right, we've been talking about Nigel Farage in the jungle. Leo has got in touch to say there is no doubt that Nigel is being sidelined by ITV. They're determined to show him in a bad light whilst mollycoddling Ella to appease the Gen Z vote. Gen Z, as I say.
Well, even I'm going to learn how to download the app. Well, someone will help me, of course, which means I then get 5 free votes to keep Nigel in the jungle. I've never voted in that programme ever in my life, but I like Nigel. I think he's great, and I can't bear the fact he's being stitched up.
And Carol says, whatever you think of Nigel, ITV have got no right to do this to him. Sadly, they do. It shows how ugly these TV stations have become. Reality TV has always been...
Well, that's what Dawn Neeson was saying, wasn't it? You know, they know exactly what they're doing, reality show. It's all choreographed from the very beginning.
Yeah. And Christina said, I've at last given up with politics. I think GB News should run the country. So do we.
Who's going to be Prime Minister? Not Bev Turner, please.
You have... Oh, yeah, just think how many times I could say I told you so over the course of my premiership. You have such a brilliant selection of commentators that continue to speak common sense, which is sadly lacking by the very people who pretend to run this country. And this one... on the story that we're about to go to now, Stephen has said, how on earth could 2 members of the royal family be named in this new book, Endgame? If the names were not in the book in the first place, you can't reveal something in a book due to a mistake in translation if it wasn't in the book to translate. What kind of of silly excuse is that?
It's a pathetic excuse, and it's a gimmick. It's Scobie has been forced to deny that he names the royals accused, and he's saying it was a translation error.
That's right. So let's now talk to royal journalist Rich Evers, who broke this story about the Dutch translation. Oh, good morning, Rick. I think it's Rick, is it? Sorry. Right, just tell us what's happened here. How did this come to public attention?
Yeah, I really assumed I didn't have something special at all, because everyone in the world got the book and the manuscript a week before. So I would assume you had the same scoop as I would have. So the names I cannot mention were in your books as well, but something seemed to be different.
And Rick, the books, they're talking now they're going to pulp these books, but you're pointing out, aren't you, it's a bit late. They're on sale right now in bookshops across Holland.
Yes, yesterday I heard from the publisher that it would get out of sales, it could be out of the shelves. And today, this morning, I went to my local bookstore and it was still there. So some other people missed that memo again.
And have you had official news from the publisher in the Netherlands? What is going to happen? Are they going to take them all off the shelves? Are they going to literally pulp them, as we've been saying?
Yeah, they're going to pulp them indeed, and they will have a new stock soon, they hope. But they don't know when, because the official thing was that it was because of were some discussions about some of the paragraphs. They wouldn't exactly mention which paragraphs, of course, which is something different than just a translation error.
Rick, what is going to happen in Holland now? Will mainstream media report the two names that are in the book? Obviously, it can't be proved whether it was true or not that they've said, but will it be reported or not?
In the Netherlands, yes, of course. It's black and white in the book, so why wouldn't we quote Mr. Scobie, what he is writing in his book?
Yeah, and that's going to be a front-page story, presumably.
It's more in the news in England than in the Netherlands, believe me. We don't care so much.
Well, you've got your own royal family, of course.
Yes, of course. And our Queen Maxima was stunning yesterday in Paris, so that was maybe front page.
And so just tell us about, so are you a royal correspondent there? So that's the reason is you were one of the first people to buy the book and read it, and then you went, oh my word, this is all here.
I heard that there were two reporters who got the early PDF of the file. We were allowed to read it a week before, and so I published it at midnight directly when the release was of the book. So then it was about 12 o'clock that I published an article in the major Dutch women's website.
Right.
And then I got a call an hour later from the publisher to ask me to get it offline because there are some issues with
And what did
because of the names that were mentioned. Yeah.
But it's a bit late, isn't it? I mean, it's the publisher's fault. They've brought out the book. They've got the names in there. Are they trying to say they didn't know?
The publisher's fault. That's my question.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because,
of course.
If you compare the English and the Dutch version, you just see very clearly that there is just missing two paragraphs. One of the paragraphs has been changed with one sentence that the writer is not allowed to say the specific names. So this cannot be a translation error. There are two options, I think. There was a memo from America, from the agent, from the legal department that sent all the translators, keep this out of your manuscript. We cannot talk about this because of it, there will be lawful actions. The other thing is, other possibility is that the Dutch publisher missed the memo. That is also possible, or they missed the Netherlands, the tiny country, to send it, or they missed it to erase it from the manuscript. I don't know.
Interesting.
My own view.
It's not a translation thing.
Yeah, my own view, Rick. It's a cynical move by the publishers and Omid Scobie to get everybody talking about these names, and it's working, isn't it? Because here you are talking to us on GB News.
That's right.
Yeah,
All right.
OK, thank
Lovely
you.
to talk to you, Rick Evers.
Everson.
Cameron, what are they going to say about this in Buckingham Palace?
Well, indeed. I mean, it's backed them into a bit of a corner, hasn't it? So Omid Scobie and the publishers in the Netherlands both are insistent that the version which Omid Scobie produced did not contain
Doesn't matter, does
the
it?
two names. But as Rick was saying there, I've seen the translation, the translated paragraphs and indeed the English version, and it's not a simple. It can't be a simple translation error. The books are fundamentally different, and different paragraphs have been taken out. This could, but Omid is, as I said, maintaining that he has never written a version ever with the two names in. So
Did they get there by osmosis?
Well, one of the theories is that the original manuscripts was sent out to all these different countries, and countries started translating the versions, and they didn't get the memo that, due to legal reasons, they had to delete the names out of the book, and which is why perhaps it's gone to print in the Netherlands and not here in the United Kingdom or anywhere else, as we understand it. That is clearly just speculation. We don't have any concrete facts, but it's a very tricky situation.
See, I've written 3 non-fiction books, right? And the legal process that you have to go through is so rigorous, and those pages are scrutinised in the most minute detail, because some people are very litigious, they have very deep pockets and very big egos. The royals tend not to be in this situation, but there must be conversations going on now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I've spoken to Buckingham Palace and Kensington Palace this morning, and they are not commenting, as they have done with all of this book. So despite these new revelations in the Dutch version, they are still maintaining their silence.
But all options available to them.
Well, they can do what they like. In the past, we have seen perhaps some legal action. There is no suggestion that they're going to do so in this case. It's a dignified silence at the moment.
The worry will be if somebody... So in Holland, they're publishing the names, obviously, and they'll be published all around the world, I suspect. What if somebody here publishes?
Well, that's not up to us to say, is it? I think at the moment we haven't seen anybody publishing those particular names. I doubt they will.
They're all over social media.
Yeah.
They are all over social media.
They were there within 5 minutes.
But the problem is, for the palace, is what's it really going to prove? We still have no context to how those conversations came about. It could have been a perfectly innocent conversation. We obviously saw Meghan's reaction during the Oprah interview in 2021, where she was clearly very upset about questions and concerns about how dark Archie's skin would be when he was born. Harry cited that as unconscious bias rather than a royal racist, and actually accused the media of giving them that label. But it's just a very messy situation, and again, it's dragging the royal family and indeed the Sussexes into this he said, she said war, and taking the spotlight off of the work that the royal family does.
Isn't this all the more reason that the Sussexes have to put out a statement saying we publicly disassociate from this tittle-tattle book, which is nasty, vicious, based on all sorts of speculation. You and I know stories in there that are just speculative, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. They need to publicly put a statement, publicly disassociating, saying, and it wasn't us or our friends. And because if they don't, people are going to think it was them.
At the moment, they haven't done so. I've contacted the Sussexes communications team on a number of occasions this week, and I haven't even received a response. It's not even a no comment. So it's, you know, at the moment, they're not commenting either. But I do get the sense that perhaps they could be trying to distance themselves from this book. But you look at Omid's last book, Finding Freedom, where Meghan apologised to the High Court for forgetting she allowed an aide to brief Omid and his co-author, Carolyn Durand. So, you know, there is a history in the Sussexes collaborating, but there's no suggestion that the Sussexes have collaborated on this book. And Omid Scobie says he is certainly not friends with Meghan, not a spokesperson for Meghan and Harry, but he does concede that he has mutual friends with Meghan.
And they're the only royals who come out of this blameless. They haven't put a foot wrong in public or private.
And other members of the royal family clearly have come in for a bit of a grilling.
My colleague Sarah Vine writes in the Mail today, if they don't denounce this poison, we'll all assume they endorse it. I'm talking about the Sussexes.
Well, watch this space, Andrew.
Yeah, all right. Thanks, Cameron. Right, still to come. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News. We're going to be talking to a former Pussycat doll. Do you know what the Pussycat dolls are?
Not really.
She's a great entertainer. She's great value. Don't go anywhere. Kimberly Wyatt's going to be right with us.
Is it a jelly baby?
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very good morning. It is 11:21. We're just discussing your emails coming in this morning. Lots of complimentary ones about our show and us. Thank you.
And also, a lot of people saying they are fed up with ITV stitching up Nigel Farage. You've got to vote for him. I say, I'm going to download the app.
Have you never done a reality show?
No.
Have you been asked to do them?
Sort of sounded out.
You've what?
Been sounded out a bit. I'd be tempted by Strictly.
Why doesn't that surprise me?
Yeah, I'd be tempted by Strictly.
I'm sure those sequins would be very appealing to you.
But I have to tell you, I would not dance with a bloke. It would have to... I'm sorry, I don't want to see two men dance together. Ballroom dancing, I don't get into trouble over this, but I just don't want... I just think why I have to do it.
Yeah, it's a bit silly, isn't it?
Yeah.
I would love to do Strictly, obviously, but well, who wouldn't? There's not a woman alive that wouldn't want to get dressed up like that every weekend.
My friend Amanda Patel
skill.
probably wouldn't want to do Strictly because I love her dearly, but she dances with 3 left feet.
Oh dear. Well, it might fix that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've been talking about Nigel and also this list we've been talking about this morning about jobs, which if you do one of these jobs, you're more likely to be able to live here. And Alison has said the reason that care workers, because of course care workers are on the list, and I would argue that they have to be. I'm sorry, I know people don't like that, but the reason that care workers, who mostly go to homes, are hard to find is they have to have their own cars, as these are not supplied by the agency. So not only are they on low wages, they've got to have enough money to buy a car. That's a really good point, Alison.
And also think about how many towns and cities now are bringing in low emission charges, which means, like in London, you've got to pay the ULEZ, and you've got to pay the
and then pay for it on an app, as we know. You don't know how to use those. Right, the season of giving is around the corner, and a new charity, the Second Chance Store, has been set up to help children in need.
Well, here to tell us all about it is the former Pussycat Doll. We're very excited to talk to her, Kimberly Wyatt, no less. Kimberly, morning to you.
Oh, good morning. How are we?
We're very well. Now, tell us all about this charity and how we can support it.
Well, so Amazon has set up the Second Chance Store, and they have a store open in the heart of London here at Brunswick Shopping Centre. Now, everything has been reused, refurbished, and on sale now at a discount. And every single penny that is sold in this store goes to the charity Barnardos, helping young people across the country.
Setting these up around the country, or is it just the one where you are now, Kimberly?
It's just this one here, but if you can't make it to the store, then it is available online as well, which you can find on Amazon.
So everything is a little cheaper, I guess, than it would be ordinarily if it was all brand new. So is it re-gifting, Kimberly, in a way, or is it stuff that hasn't been opened yet? I can see perfumes on the shelf behind you.
Yes, it's a little bit of everything. So I'm very passionate about sustainability, creating a circular economy. And what's happening with the Second Chance Store is that anything that has been bought and not used is sent back. And the stuff that maybe needs to be refurbished, it's sent back, refurbished, put back on the shelves, and you can buy it at a discount, which is perfect at times like this when Christmas is right around the corner.
OK, so this is stuff that's been sent back to Amazon. Now we're getting it. This is a radical concept. It sometimes takes us a while to get our heads around these new things. So this is stuff that people have bought on Amazon. They've maybe sent it back. Maybe the packaging was damaged a little bit or something like that, or it didn't quite work properly. Amazon have said, right, we're not just going to throw this on the tip. We're going to put it in this store. We're going to get Kimberly Wyatt, and she's going to generate the crowds, and we're going to sell this stuff on.
Well, let's hope so. I mean, there's everything from air fryers to laptops, earbuds, gaming consoles, loads of toys, like anything you might want for those gift lists. I feel like you could probably find here, and at a discount, because like you said, some of these gifts have just shown up maybe with a little bit of a damaged box or something, and it's sent back. So we might as well buy them at a cost.
And what happens to the money that's generated from these sales, Kimberly? Does it go to charity, or does it go into Amazon's very deep pockets?
So here at this shop until December 12th, every penny bought is going to Barnardos charity,
Very good.
which helps young people across the country.
Brilliant. What's on your Christmas list, Kimberly?
Well, I think I'd like to try out an air fryer, but I've literally been looking around trying to make my Christmas list myself. So, yeah, some cookbooks, some Maggi mix, you know, I'll keep throwing it out there, and hopefully Santa Claus will bring me all the best gifts.
Brilliant. Don't get me started on air fryers. I'm an air fryer bore. I could have talked to you all morning about air fryers. It's changed my life completely. But thank you so much, Kimberly.
I want to join the crowd.
Yeah, you don't. Honestly, it's worth it. But thank you so much, Kimberly Wyatt there, with that charity. Brilliant idea.
I've never bought a thing from Amazon in my life.
I know you haven't.
Because I want to support the high street. So I was willing to be very cynical about that. But actually, that is a good thing. And it's raising money for Barnardos. And that's children. And we think about children at Christmas. So fair play to Amazon. For once, I'm going to be nice about you. But make the most of it, because it won't happen again. OK, gear change now. Talks are currently being held in Qatar about extending the truce between Israel and Hamas. Israel says it's been sent a list of hostages held in Gaza who could be released later today. This follows 12 more hostages that were freed yesterday.
So we're delighted to be joined now by head of the medical team who treats the released hostages, Professor Haggai Levine. Good morning to you, Professor. Thank you so much. The hostages who are being released, what sort of shape are they in physically and mentally?
Well, it depends. There are different cases. They were, it seems like they were held in different groups and were given different treatment. But I'm overwhelmed by the condition of Elma Abraham. You can see her picture here, is a 4-year-old woman who on the 6th of October, before the abduction, was completely functional, independent, treating her grandchildren. And after she was abducted, her family tried over and over to get her the essential medications she needs, and unsuccessfully. And when she came to Israel, she was in shock, in a severe medical condition, life-threatening. The body temperature was 28 degrees, and she was nearly dead. With the amazing treatment of the Soroka Medical Center, they were able to save her life, to ventilate her, and I was with her yesterday, and it was really moving when she woke up and said some words and listened to music she loves, but she's still in severe condition. Unfortunately, on her body, you can see bruises that seems like happened from dragging her around, like she's an object, and total neglect, both physically, mentally, and medically. And we hear now some stories from some of the other hostages about abuse, neglect, torture in a sense. So that's very worrisome, and it means how important, how urgent it is to release the others. I spoke today with the Bibas family. You see here, Kfir Bibas, now 10 months old baby, that obviously in such conditions, it's not only life-threatening for him, but obviously a great suffering for him, for his mother, for his brother with him. And we don't want, to be released and then have mental retardation or handicap for life, and he doesn't get his proper diet, his proper care. So the most vulnerable, the babies and the elderly, are at special risk, and many of them are actually, they need drugs that they don't receive.
Professor, there was a story in some of our papers today about a little 9-year-old girl who was released, and her dad says she's barely spoken a word since she was released because she was told to stay in absolute silence while she was held in captivity. How long do you think it will take for that little girl to get back to normal, if ever?
Well, obviously it will scar her for life. I hope that with the support of the family, of the professionals, she will be able to, to recover and to gain again trust in the world and get over this behavioral change that is related to such a long period. It's more than 50 days in captivity in very poor conditions. The Hamas was trying to show like the treatment is okay, but it's obvious now. And the recovery is very long, very complicated. By the way, it also affects the family members, not only the hostages, also the family members, when they see their beloved after such a long wait, coming back, not all of them in perfect condition. Obviously, some of them have, so that means that also the families in a post-traumatic situation, and they also need support, and we try to provide them in the families forum, our teams, provide them the needed psychological and social support also for the families, together with the hospitals and health maintenance organizations in Israel. It's a national trauma, it's trauma for the families, and it's, of course, for the hostages first place.
OK. All right, thank you so much. That's Professor Haggai Levine in Tel Aviv, treating hostages as they are released, and hopefully many more of them will be. Right, still to come, premiering Saturday. Peter Andre and Ellie Costello will be presenting a brand new show on GB News every Saturday morning. They're going to be here after the break to tell us all about it.
Good morning. Your top stories from the GB Newsroom. An inquest has found all 4 teenagers drowned following a car crash in North Wales. The bodies of Javon Hurst, Harvey Owen, Wilf Fitchett and Hugo Morris were found in a car that had left the road at Garreg, overturned and was partially submerged in water. The coroner announced the results of the inquiry in a brief 4-minute hearing. A major search was launched for the A-level students after they failed to return home to Shropshire from an overnight camping trip to the Snowdonia area.
Israel has received a further list of people to be released from Hamas captivity later today. The exchange of hostages for Palestinian prisoners will be the 6th in the extended truce between Israel and Hamas, set to expire tomorrow morning. Israel says the truce could be extended provided terror group Hamas continues to free at least 10 Israeli hostages per day. Israel Defense Forces say the 12 hostages released last night include 10 Israelis and 2 Thai nationals in exchange for 30 Palestinian prisoners. A controversial new book about the royal family has been pulled from bookshelves in the Netherlands. Endgame has been taken off Dutch shelves amid reports the book names members of the royal family who allegedly asked about the skin colour of Harry and Meghan's son before he was born. The Dutch publisher says an error occurred in the translation and is currently being rectified. And Labour will set out measures today aimed at protecting small businesses from antisocial behaviour. Shadow Business and Trade Secretary Jonathan Reynolds is addressing small business owners in Essex. He says ensuring invoices are paid on time and rolling out town centre police patrols are important and will be introduced if the party wins the next election. For more on all of those stories, you can visit our website, gbnews.com.
For exclusive, limited edition and rare gold coins that are always newsworthy, Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2681 and €1.1558 euros. The price of gold, £1,607 and 75 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 7,446 points.
Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, we've got a big treat for you all because next month, it's just a few days away, Ellie Costello and Peter Andre are presenting a brand new show on GB News every Saturday from 10 till 12. And an even bigger treat, they're here in the studio.
Morning.
Welcome, the new husband and wife team.
This is actually great. I was so excited when they said we were working together again because we had a great time in May.
We did. We did 3 days together in May and we had the loveliest time, didn't we? We've got quite a chatty, relaxed vibe between us. We're going to bring it to Saturday morning, so we're really looking forward to that. We're going to be talking about I'm a Celebrity, of course, talking about Nigel Farage. And our very own Peter Andre was on it 19 years ago, would you believe?
Didn't you win it?
No, I didn't win that year. Kerry Katona did, but I have to say...
What happened to her then?
I have to say, though...
busy time.
Yes.
You know the difference between then and now, and I've only just realised this, there was no such thing as social media. In fact, even the internet, and I know it sounds ridiculous, was popular, but it wasn't kind of what it is now. And so back then, if you were in the jungle, all you missed was really your mum and dad and your immediate friends. And you might be kept up with the news by a newspaper on a Sunday. So now, you know, everyone's got access to everything. It must be driving them mad.
We're wondering, watching it now, Peter, what's making it to the cutting room floor and what's making it to air? In your experience of having been there, was there storylines going on that when you came out, you were surprised they hadn't used?
100%. So the first thing I noticed was, you know Mike Reid? Mike Reid was on there and he got voted out first. And I thought that was a bit unfair because he was actually a really good character, but he never got any airtime.
Yeah.
But the real story of that, for me, apart from what was shown, was Johnny Rotten and Jenny Bond, because Johnny Rotten, of course, was anti-establishment. Jenny
She was
Bond,
the BBC Royal.
And they were at loggerheads, and I thought, surely this is what it's going to be all about, and it wasn't. So it's interesting what they pick.
Yeah, you're at the mercy of the editors, aren't you? We were just been discussing that this morning with Nigel Farage and the fact that he's...
been edited out.
He has,
again
largely,
and again.
it seems. It's always a risk, though, isn't it, doing something like that? It's a risk to take do a reality show.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we're looking forward to on Saturday, actually, is Peter's going to be giving us the inside scoop of what it's actually like to be in the jungle for those 3 weeks. Because we've seen with Nigel, I mean, we were just talking about how much weight he seems to have lost already. It's difficult, isn't it, being without food for that long and those luxuries?
It is, and I think you have this perception of, you know, I want to eat as much as I can before I go in, which is exactly what I did. The biggest mistake ever, because what you do is you don't realise how it literally stops. Everyone thinks surely they're giving you this and they're giving... There's none of that. On the odd occasion, you can hear someone laughing, and we figured out it was Ant and Dec that were only 5 minutes away. We didn't know this at the time. We thought we were in the middle of nowhere. But you're hungry, you're tired, and I think after 3 or 4 days, excuse this, but you become constipated.
And it's going to be like working at GB News.
Yeah. What was the most unpleasant thing you had to eat? Can you remember?
Honestly, I got to the... I'm such a foodie, and I love food so much that by day 4, I didn't care what we ate. Everything tasted a million times better than you think it would. So
even if it was...
it didn't matter.
Even if it was sheep testicles?
I didn't go as far as sheep balls, but I definitely did...
Let's talk. Listen, you bring a lot more to this channel than just your jungle experience, Peter. I am the first to say people will be you are this unexpected choice, right? Let's say people will be saying to Ellie, "Who's your co-presenter, Peter Andre? What does he know about news?" So tell us, Ellie, why this works.
Well, it works because we take the stories that everyone's been talking about from the week. So this week, for example, we'll be talking about Omid Scobie's new book and the revelations about Harry and Meghan. We're also going to be talking about vaping. Apparently, teachers don't need to tell parents if their kids have been caught vaping at school. That's got under Pete's collar this morning.
Because you've got about 6,000 children, haven't you?
We're Greek, we're like cockroaches, we just spread. And I mean, some of the things I hear...
How many do you have? Children.
Oh, I thought you meant
not
vapes.
cockroaches. No, or vapes.
Well, I'm going to have my 5th biological child, so
amazing.
Technically 6, really.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, it's amazing. But here's the thing. Even then, you know, at school, when we were at school, we got the cane, we got things, we got disciplined hard, and our parents knew everything. So stories like that get under my skin.
Yeah, and that's what's nice, and that's what you bring to GB News. It is that experience. You talk a lot about parenting and having children and discipline and things that our audience actually really cares about, and that really cut through in May. So we're really looking forward to the next few weeks.
Do you think do you think the Omid Scobie book will be in the fiction section of libraries or non-fiction?
Well, I'm not sure. We've got all this controversy, haven't we, now, about it being pulled out of the shops
in Holland, except it's still on the shelves in Holland, because we talked to the royal reporter who broke the story, and it's probably selling like hotcakes.
The only thing is, obviously, he's lied a few times, so this is... It's making...
And we don't mind controversy here, Peter Andre. You'll find that out. And you can wade into it this week, talking about the Elgin marbles with your Greek heritage.
Yes.
I was about to... You know, I was thinking that this morning. You know, you don't mess with the Greeks, you know. You don't mess with the Greeks.
Should we send them back?
Just keep them a little longer, but send them back. Make sure you do, because I'll come and find you.
We have had them for 200 years, and it's quite a nice home, the British Museum.
It is.
Do you think we should share them? Do you think maybe like custody, joint custody?
We'll never get them back, Kelly.
Oh,
that's my worry.
He's being very diplomatic.
I'm thinking about what I'm going to say here, because...
Do people in Greece care passionately about the Elgin marbles coming back, or is it a chattering class story?
Here's the thing. You've got to think. A lot of the generation now don't think about things that were happening 200-300 years ago.
No.
But the generation of before, my parents and back, they remember everything.
Right.
This is what the problem is.
Yeah. So maybe it does need talking about to educate that new generation actually about.
Happened for a while, but just.
Yeah.
I bet most people have never even seen them.
No, I've never seen them.
Oh.
No,
I've never seen them in real life.
They look good. The pictures are good.
Yes.
Well, let's do a trip.
They look like pink Himalayans.
Or the Parthenon sculptures we have to call them, don't we?
Parthenon sculptures.
Yes.
Because that's their proper name.
Right, well, that is going to be Ellie and Peter, Saturday morning, bright and early, 10 till 12, on
What's the show
GB
called?
News.
Is it called Ellie and Peter?
Saturday morning live.
Right, fabulous.
Yeah,
well,
brilliant. 10 o'clock till 12
I'm really
on
glad you
Saturday.
told me that, because I thought
there
it was...
you go.
Yeah, I thought, okay, great.
Probably a good idea to know what your show's called.
That's good. I thought it was Ellie and Peter.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Good luck
Still to come
Good
this
luck.
morning. Keir Starmer takes on Rishi Sunak at PMQs at midday. Stay with us for all the build-up. This is Britain's Newsroom.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. It'll stay dry and clear for many through the rest of the day, but it will be feeling very cold, and as a result there are some snow and ice warnings in force for Thursday morning. We're going to be seeing some snow being brought by this cold front along northeastern coasts through the rest of the day and tomorrow, and then some further rain and potentially snow across the southwest later. So as that rain across the southwest moves northwards and bumps into the colder air, it could start to bring some snow to the high ground of Devon and Cornwall. Snow showers across the northeast as well as Northern Ireland will bring a risk of some icy stretches by Thursday morning. Widely though, it's going to be a very cold start to Thursday, as we could be as low as -8 in rural areas of Scotland and northwest England. So a very cold start to the day, but some sunshine to be had in similar areas where we'll see it through today, parts of Northern Ireland and much of northern and western England. In the south, though, it will stay cloudier with that rain and potentially hill snow persisting through much of the day. There'll be another cold day, temperatures only reaching 4 or 5 degrees for many of us. Across the far north of Scotland, it's going to be windy, so it will feel chillier up here. And on Friday morning, it will be another very cold start. We could see some freezing fog across southeastern areas, so that will bring a bit of a murky start. There'll be some more sunshine around on Saturday, and then on Sunday, we could see the temperatures finally starting to rise a little.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Ah!
No, thank you.
CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
They've got more.
Right, can we stop talking in the studio, please? Tom Harwood, we're not ready for you just yet. We are pleased to be joined again by former Labour MP Stephen Pound, former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, before PMQs.
You notice he doesn't share those jammy dodgers?
Who? Tom Harwood?
No, he keeps them. He keeps them all for himself. I find them half-eaten.
Tom and Emily will be the capable hands in which you will be relaxing for the rest of the afternoon. Can we?
I thought jammy dodger was a stage name.
I've got my bossy teacher hairdo on.
There we are. There's his jammy dodger. There's his jammy dodger.
Oh, there we go.
He never shares them.
He's given Emily one.
I don't think he has given Emily one.
I give up.
Emily's happily spoken for. Stop that.
I give up.
You're sounding like you're Frankie Howard here.
Can we talk about the news, please? Right,
Yes.
listen. Have I got news for you? Big BBC news satire comedy show, been going for years, Stephen. Very good.
I was on it about 20 years ago.
Were you?
Yeah.
Well,
I was dreadful.
Yes, I thought you probably were.
It's a bit like Have I Got News for You when you're on here every week, to be honest. But this comedian,
who's not funny,
Khan, has been given the job of hosting it this weekend. But this is proving controversial because he's been tweeting that Israel is genocidal at the moment.
He's been doing more than tweeting. I mean, he's actually been retweeting stuff that's absolutely disgusting.
It's poisonous what he's doing.
It is, and I just would have thought that, you know, with the best will in the world, this is not the time when you can have somebody with such obvious views and so much on one side. It doesn't matter if it's one side or the other. You shouldn't be actually chairing this programme.
And Stephen, it's not difficult to do a bit of due diligence and check what people are saying and doing. It's the BBC.
Well, GB News did it in 15 seconds. And they came up with it. Look, it's outrageous and it's incredibly offensive, but also it will actually detract from the actual social program, which is actually quite a good programme. But it's like with Gary Lineker now. I find it difficult sometimes watching Match of the Day without thinking of some of those daft tweets he puts out. But that's not in the same league as Gus Khan. He's done some stuff which is, as you rightly say, poisonous.
Yeah, poisonous. And
it has been racist as well. And if that come from a white, right-wing, in inverted commas, politician, there'd be hell to pay. But he can get away with it using the coconut slur. Against
against Priti Patel.
Swiller. Was it Swiller or Priti?
Priti Patel.
Yeah, Priti Patel.
Outrageous.
There was a whole discussion about that. Had a picture of her saying, "Oh, curry again, is it Priti?" And then businessman, "Oh, coconut curry."
That is disgusting.
That is absolutely overt racism.
And because he's a person of colour, he thinks he can get away with it.
Well,
he appears he does get away with it. BBC should pull him off, shouldn't they?
I think they should. I mean, it's due to go out this Friday, isn't it? This particular one.
Well, there's plenty of other people could stand in for him.
But they're doing it on purpose because it's going to get publicity. It's going to get people talking about it. But what I find particularly upsetting about this and this BBC bias against Israel, so much so that in Israel they've actually got a TV programme taking the mickey out of the BBC for the bias they show. And this was after BBC staff were blocked, news staff were blocked from taking part in the March Against Anti-Semitism at the weekend.
And some of them went along anyway. It's like, imagine some of these BBC executives who are paid eye-watering sums of money.
By all of us.
Well, indeed. But
money.
I think it's like they wake up every morning and think, what can I do today to destroy the reputation of the BBC and guarantee that we actually lose the idea of a state broadcaster paid for compulsorily by taxation? Because they're doing a pretty damn good job of...
And we shouldn't forget the BBC refused to call Hamas terrorists,
which they still do.
They called them militants at one stage.
My favourite one was Jeremy Bowen, who's the international editor, describing that stash of assault rifles they discovered inside the Lashifa hospital as not inconceivable that the weapons belonged to the hospital security.
Well, it happened all the time.
In London
Yeah. Kalashnikovs in the Royal Free Hospital in North London.
Well, I also think what's so strange about it, looking at some of the things that he's tweeted, is at a time of such heightened international sensitivity, to put somebody in charge of that show, which has to tread a line between good taste and bad, is such a high risk.
Because would you trust him to referee that?
No.
Well, the interesting thing is the BBC is saying it's nothing to do, not me, Gov, it's actually to do with Hat-Trick Productions, the people...
I'm sorry, it's being broadcast on the BBC.
Exactly. It's also been commissioned by the BBC and signed off by the BBC. And to try to actually sell the past and say it's all down to Hat-Trick...
If you were a guest on
mendacious.
If you were booked to be on that programme, would you pull out?
To be honest with you, I probably would, because I think it's going to be very uncomfortable. And this issue...
And I would,
this issue on a serious note, Bev, it's just so divisive.
It is. And I would say on Saturday night, don't watch that, watch GB News, where Patrick Christie's... no, Mark Dolan is on a Saturday night, isn't it? Right, with 5 minutes from PMQ's Stephen Pound. What is Rishi Sunak going to have to deal with today?
Which particular disaster? Well, he's going to hope that James Cleverly is nowhere near a microphone. I can tell you that for a start.
That's the Home Secretary who had to apologise for using a rather rude word.
Yes, indeed. He referred to Stockton as an S-hole, but he actually said, I wasn't actually calling that a SH1T. He's actually referring to the MP for, like that's better.
Isn't that the first rule of polls? Just stop digging. Stop.
Yeah. No. I mean, today, I think it'll be a bit flat today, because it's all to do with the fact that these immigration numbers. Yesterday, we had this extraordinary upsurge of emotion from the Conservative backbenchers going on about, and Lee Anderson, God love him, say, we're not standing for this in Ashfield, we've had enough of this.
He's quite right. We've all had enough of it.
But people have. But you know and I know that when Rishi Sunak stands there, and Robert Jenrick yesterday stands there and said, oh, we're dealing with this, we've got a very, very good scheme in here. What? After 13 years, they've done naff all.
You know what? He started the week, of course, Rishi Sunak, at this business conference in Hampton Court Palace, Dawn. He got a lot to brag about. This, what was it called? The Global Investment Summit, it was, wasn't it? Maybe he's going to be still...
£30 billion.
Riding on the wave of that excitement.
But then the thing is, at the moment, it's like, they have one good thing happen. It's like, after the autumn statement where it's like, that we're going to save you all a bit of money. We're not really, but we're going to save you all a bit of money. 9:30 the very next morning, the immigration figures come out.
I know.
It's like 1 minute you're feeling, hey, I've done something. Oh,
and coincidentally, then he cancels a meeting with the Greek Premier.
I was just going to go on.
Because he's very cross at the Greek Premier, says he wants the Elgin marbles back, and that is, of course, the classic, what we call dead cat strategy.
Absolutely.
Yes. Throw something in there
Just distraction
to distract from the immigration.
Mitsotakis must be absolutely furious about this, the Greek Prime Minister, because what was a perfectly sensible, rational deal and discussion has now been completely hijacked. And the thing that slightly worries me about British democracy, there'll probably be more question about the Parthenon sculptures stroke Elgin marbles than there will be about Palestine and Israel.
Do you think they're talking about the Elgin marbles in your old constituency?
Oh, they speak of little else.
Yes.
You can't hardly get through the door.
And you're part of the East End.
And on that bombshell, we do need to move on. Dawn needs some
Are we losing our marbles?
You lost yours years ago, dear.
Up next, Good Afternoon Britain with Tom and Emily, including PMQs. What else have you got, guys, apart from your jammy dodgers?
Yes, we'll be digesting the good, the bad and the ugly with two MPs, Scott Benton and Steve McCabe. And also, what an absolute cheek. EU boss Ursula von der Leyen saying we need to rejoin the EU to fix Brexit.
It's interesting. We've got the full clip, which hasn't yet been shown on television. We'll be bringing that to you. And also, did you know that the Brexit deal is up for review in 2025? 5-year periods, repeal or review. Could this be the key that Ursula von der Leyen sees to returning us to the European Union? Concerning stuff.
OK, thank you both.
And she is an intensely irritating woman. Ursula von der Leyen.
I was talking about Emily Carver like that. She's wonderful.
What are you talking about? I don't mean Dawn Neeson. She's intensely irritating.
I was at the LSE with her. She's wonderful.
Where were you with her?
Were you really?
We were at LSE at the same time. I was president of the Students' Union, and she was a punk. Then she spent most of her time up at Camden Market going to the punk.
I didn't know that.
What's your nickname for her? Go on, Stephen.
Never mind.
Oh, come on, share it.
No, it wasn't me. It was some of the more crude, sexist members of the...
Were you romantically linked to Ursula von der Leyen?
In my dreams, big boy.
Was she attractive?
Oh, she absolutely dropped dead.
She still is.
She had that slim, spiky, punky look that was very, very attractive.
And was she into punk rock music and stuff?
She very much so.
Would you have predicted at that point when you were at the London School of Economics that she would go on to such dizzy heights?
No, the interesting thing was
tyrannical control.
She was one of stop it. She was one of the very, very few members of the LSE who actually had a sort of bodyguard because her father was a sort of extremely senior politician in Germany, and so every now and then these people, not lederhosen,